This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider. My guest today is Sara Petersen. Sara is a writer. Her essays about feminism, domesticity, and motherhood have appeared in the New York Times, Harper's Bazaar, Washington Post, InStyle, Glamour, and elsewhere. Sara is also a mother of 3. And Sara just published a book which is titled Momfluenced, Inside the Maddening, Picture-Perfect World of Mommy Influencer Culture. I am so curious about this and can't wait to talk to Sara about this topic. Sara, hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you here today. And please tell me about the book.
Yeah, so it's a deep dive into mommy influencer culture, primarily on Instagram. And in the book, I trace sort of my personal preoccupation with the culture. I interview several momfluencers to sort of get their take on their lives and their work. And I consider the performance of motherhood from various angles and the construction of ideal motherhood as being very much rooted in race and class and other layers of privilege.
How did you come to that topic? How did you decide this is something you want to dive deeper into? Were you following moms on Instagram, momfluencers?
Yeah, for sure. There were a few mommy bloggers that I discovered early on as a mom. I had a newborn and a toddler, I think, when I first discovered a few. And I was really struck by just their presentation of motherhood as this very joyful, very natural thing, whereas I was really still struggling to understand my own maternal identity. I was still struggling with the doing of motherhood versus sort of the, idealized imagery of motherhood that were sold online and, through so much cultural osmosis. So, yeah, I just wanted to understand the disconnect that I was feeling.
Mm-hmm. As you're talking, I'm thinking, but this is internet. It's not only our internet, Instagram. It's not only motherhood. It's everything else. There are authors out there who make it look so easy. And us other authors are like, how the hell? Mm-hmm. And then there are, I don't know, whatever you want. It's the nature of Instagram, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is an aspirational platform. I think it becomes more complicated when it comes to motherhood, though, because in many cultures and countries, motherhood is a really difficult, unsupported endeavor. So when we're being fed accounts that make it look easy or make it look, like you should love every moment of it, it can be really challenging, I think.
But also, what disturbed me, this fake imagery. It took me a long time to understand that people don't look like this. They don't, in their everyday lives, they do not look like that. Their kids don't look like that. Their houses don't look like that. I learned that when I lived in Los Angeles, and across the street, we had young neighbors who were YouTubers. And it was interesting to see how they worked with whole teams. Like something that looked like a homemade video. They had light, they had camera, they had makeup people, they had assistants. And then you look at it, it looks like this guy made a selfie. He did not.
Right. Totally.
Tell me, this is funny. I should have prepared myself better. I do not follow any momfluencers. These moms are entrepreneurs. They use these children and their roles as moms to sell products, don't they?
Right. Yeah. The primary monetization model has momfluencers pairing with brands to, share product reviews, essentially. So a brand will pay a momfluencer, maybe $10,000 for one Instagram post, 2 stories, and 1 reel about, their paper towels or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they can also monetize their accounts by affiliate links. So whatever they're wearing, you can click through to the brand selling it and they'll get a percentage of, sales.
Does that work? Have you come across, like, I always wonder, do people really click and buy?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Oh, I'm obviously not the right audience for this. I'm like, really?
No, it's a hugely profitable industry. It's really, in many ways, taken the place of traditional women's advertising, on television and in glossy women's mags. Yeah, it's a really, really profitable selling model.
Mm-hmm. Were there any big learnings for you through this project? Because as I'm reading, you've done a lot of research. This is a deeply researched topic on your side. I'm curious, how has it changed your view of momfluencers, A, and B, did you bring any learnings out of it?
Yeah, I think going in, I might have unconsciously assumed that everybody that follows momfluencers were following for similar reasons and had similar hangups about culture. And I actually found that, people follow momfluencers for a huge, huge, huge variety of reasons. Whether they want to find a toddler-friendly, quick and easy meal, whether or not they want to find an eye cream when they're going through newborn sleeplessness, or whether or not they want gentle parenting advice. There's so many reasons that we flock to momfluencers.
So resources. So they really consciously, they're like, I'm following this person because I want to click on these links. Why did you follow them?
I think it's right to point out, yes, as a resource, that is one reason, but a lot of the other reason, and the reason I was following, I think, for a long time, was to sort of search for a quote unquote better way to inhabit motherhood. I wanted to feel like my mothering journey was easier and more beautiful and more fulfilling. And I think I was sort of looking for blueprints.
Tell me a little bit more about your work in general and your writing.
Yeah, I started writing primarily to suss out my newly awakened feminist rage upon becoming a mother. I had always...
You only started writing when you became a mother?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. I have a background I got a master's degree in literature, and, thought I was going to pursue academia for a while, but I didn't. And yeah, I just had so many thoughts and feelings once I became a mom. And I think I understood feminism in a way that I didn't before having kids, and just understood how the way we raise girls in many cultures to pursue motherhood at all costs, despite it being an unpaid job, and despite this job upholding so many paid industries, you really feel the gendered inequities at play once you become a mother.
You do.
Yeah. So at least I did.
But what was fascinating for me is that how men can never understand what you go through when you become a mother. I think you cannot explain it to another person. What shocked me was this baby was born, and I was a different person. My life was a different life. Time was different. It was literally I became a different person and I landed on a different planet.
Right.
And your body is different, and your relationship with your body is different. Your relationship to your energy, to yourself, to time, to energy, everything. And that is something that only we can understand because we went through it.
Right.
And that's very hard to explain. And thus, it's very hard to explain what we go through, especially in these first months as new moms. Right.
I think it is such an extraordinary life transition. And I think that we're treated more seriously as an extraordinary life transition. I imagine that many of us would have not easier times adjusting, but wouldn't feel so shocked, I think.
Yes, yes. And you, especially when I think coming from Europe, where here in Austria, you have on average between a year and 2 years of maternity leave, paid maternity
Right.
leave, where your
Right.
job is secured, you can't be fired, A, and B,
Yep.
when you come back as a mom, you can choose to work shorter hours in the same position. So when
That's
I
incredible.
think about going through giving birth and becoming a mom, and then facing the fact that A, there's no maternity leave, you have to go back to
Right.
work as soon as possible, and B, there's no childcare.
Right.
I always say I'm surprised women in the US are not out on the streets and just rioting until this is
Right.
changed.
No, it is absolutely absurd. It's untenable, and mothers and caregivers are suffering, have been suffering. It's truly it's unconscionable.
Let's talk about your mom. Tell me,
Sure.
yes, what's her name?
I don't know if I want to share that.
Oh,
I just
even the
wanna-
first name? Okay.
Yeah, I just feel like I just want to
Okay.
protect her privacy.
Okay,
Sorry.
let's do that. Yeah, that's totally fine. You're the first out of 130 interviews, but
Oh, really?
that's totally
Oh
fine.
my gosh.
Yeah. But then tell me about mom a little bit and about her life.
Yeah, she grew up in New England. And let's see, she grew up in New England. She went to college, she studied animal science.
What is animal science?
She ultimately worked as a vet tech.
Uh-huh.
So not a fully licensed veterinarian,
But almost. Yeah. Okay.
right. And she, after college, moved to Colorado, where she was just sort of, being a hippie in Colorado.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
I want to be a hippie in Colorado.
Exactly. And she met my dad there, and she got married really young. I think she was 22. And yeah, throughout my and my siblings' childhood, she was a stay-at-home mom. And yeah, she's a really artistic, creative person. She's got a great sense of humor. She doesn't really suffer fools. Yeah, I guess that's like the short synopsis.
How many children does she have?
3.
And how is she doing now? What did she do, and how did she deal with when you guys left home?
It was a real struggle for sure, which I completely understand. I think when you devote all of your energy, your time, and your identity to the caretaking of others, once that role is over, I think it can be, feel like a real profound loss of identity and of purpose. And it has been, a real learning experience watching her adapt to this new phase of life and experience challenges and bumps along the way. And it's really made me think about, a life, how to think about purpose, how to think about meaning in life as a mom. And really has made me think about her generation and how, they came of age in the era of, shoulder pads and power suits, but also many of them still adhered to more traditional gender roles, and their work was centered in the home. And I don't think for her and many of her contemporaries, there was much talk about like, okay, I'm going to devote, these years to working within the home. And then after my kids are grown, like this will be my next phase of life. Like, I don't think, just in the way I don't know that there's enough serious consideration of the adjustment to motherhood, I don't know if there's enough consideration of, the what next after the kids are grown, if you don't have a professional career.
I just had a guest talking about that and saying that her mom actually told her, you have to think ahead. You have to think about what life is going to be like in your 40s, 50s, 60s, like have some kind of a plan.
Yeah. I totally agree.
And I know how many of my guests mentioned that their moms in America dealt with this empty nesters syndrome and figuring out the new life.
Yeah.
I'm curious. My mom was also a hippie in Croatia, not in Colorado.
Yeah.
She always stayed a hippie. You know, my mom.
Yep.
And while other moms went to work and cooked dinner and breakfast and lunches and packed school lunches, my mom, you know, pursued her acting career and her art career as an artist and was very successful in it. But there was no, you know, she was not a housewife.
Yep.
How did your mom marry her hippie experiences with being a stay-at-home mom?
Yeah, I mean, so she would sort of, I think she looked at, you know, creating meals as an art form. She certainly looked at home decor as an art form and a vehicle for her creativity. She, you know, her gardens were legendary. She was very invested in the natural world. You know, our basement was sort of her like arts and crafts studio, and she would make these like gorgeous wreaths and floral arrangements. She would go to like junk stores and find, you know, old antique prints and reframe them. So she really made like home sort of the focus of her hippiedom, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Let's talk about the lessons you feel you've learned from her. What were the most important things you learned from her?
Definitely a love for the natural world. Just being outside and getting my hands in the dirt is like a huge part of just the way I fill my soul up. And I certainly can see that I got that from her. And, you know, just learning the names of the plants around you, learning the names of the birds. I think a real like pursuit of pleasure, whether or not that's like a delicious crust of bread with like stinky cheese, or whether that's meeting with my girlfriends without any kids or spouses together, just an active pursuit of personal pleasure. I think I gained from her.
But I hear simple pleasures out of this because mom didn't go to a designer store. It's not like I need to go to Fiji for a summer holiday to have my pleasure.
Totally. Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. Accessible, you know, everyday pleasures for sure. And yeah, my sense of humor for sure. I just like a profane sense of humor, I think I would say is another lesson, I guess. Just the importance of laughing at life, even, you know, in absurd or difficult circumstances.
Has that served you ever? Or does it serve you?
Yes.
Was there anything you wish she taught you? Is there anything that you had to learn by yourself that you find interesting and important?
I think I would have loved to have talked to her, you know, as a girl about motherhood just being a choice and being one of many ways to, you know, train one's life. I never considered not having kids simply because I never considered it a question. I just considered it a given. And it's not like she told me that or said like, oh, you have to have, you know, it was nothing like that. But there was just never any open dialogue about what the choice to have kids means and what maybe the choice not to have kids would look like and how one might live life differently or consider life differently. And I think that's just important for girls, especially to think about.
Absolutely. But you know what's funny? My dad had that conversation with me.
Really?
And I seriously, I have to bow to him for that because I was 36 and still single. And we had lunch and I was telling him about my friend who's also single and my age and how frustrated she is about this. And then he started and he told me, and we had this big conversation where he told me that exactly that having children is not necessarily the only option of a fulfilled and happy life. And that thankfully he knows many people who live a great, fulfilled and happy life without children. The most important thing, whatever you decide, is to find something that makes you happy and fulfilled, whether you have children or not. So he gave me this whole speech, and I seriously felt like some weird block inside of me just released. I was like, Jesus, somebody took 50 tons of my shoulders right now.
Oh, yeah.
It was incredible. It was really incredible. I do wish it came from my mom. So, but I have to give this credit to my dad. That was fantastic, especially from a dad to a daughter.
Definitely. Yeah. What a gift.
Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Where can my listeners find you? And your book.
Yeah, you can buy the book wherever books are sold in the US. And I write a newsletter called In Pursuit of Clean Countertops, which is about the myth of the ideal mother. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter at @SLouisePetersen.
I'm just thinking right now, speaking that before we finish, you were talking about the myth of ideal mother. What is the myth of an ideal mother? Let's elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the myth largely is that there is one type of ideal mother. And I think, in the US, the ideal mother is white, thin, cishet, able-bodied, has access to generational wealth, adheres to Western beauty standards. And it's an ideal that excludes and harms many, many people. So that's sort of my area of interest in the newsletter.
Sara, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyoumama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.